The International Criminal Court has denied former President Rodrigo Duterte's request to limit the victim verification process in its drug war investigation. In a 20-page order issued on April 17, the pre-trial chamber approved the ICC registry's list of documents to verify the identity of victims seeking to participate in the case. It said the documents were sufficiently detailed and reduced the risk of fraud. The chamber also noted that in the absence of standard IDs, declarations signed by two witnesses may be accepted subject to review. Duterte is facing crimes against humanity charges over killings linked to the Davao Death Squad and police operations from 2011 to 2019. For her insights, we have ICC Assistant to Counsel Attorney Kristina Conti. Welcome back to Morning Matters. I hope you had a good Holy Week break.
Yes, good morning, Gretchen. Yes, I did.
Your reaction to the ICC's decision to reject the defense's request to limit victim verification?
Well, first, it was expected because this follows jurisprudence of the court. There were prior admissions of this sort in Coney, in Ongwen. So dati na itong nailagay ng ICC na pwede namang patunay ng identity ang kahit na anong ID sa kanila noon dahil yung pagkakataon sa kanila merong nasunog, nag-evacuate sila, nasa refugee camp sila, kaya binigyan ng parang guidance na ito ang sitwasyon ngayon. In the Philippine situation, clearly the court favored the existing conditions that the national ID system is not comprehensive, it is not mandatory as yet, and it is not even complete, diba? May mga papel pa lang ang hawak. And that not everybody has passports. So we welcome this development.
But can you help us understand the challenge when it comes to getting actual identification documents from the victim?
Well, first, you have to understand the audience. The victims of the war on drugs were the poorest of the poor. Those who live in urban poor areas where identity documents are not, generally required. Wala silang mga security guard doon na kailangan mong pakitaan ng ID mo. These are not gated communities. And so the IDs that they would have tend to be like barangay IDs that they would use for work, possibly SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig, but then that would depend on their employer if they would release these IDs to them. And so the minimum document that they would have would be an LGU ID or even a voter certificate in some cases. And to understand the situation also, the victims in this case, the victims of the case would also include the surviving kin. So for those who are quite unclear on this, the victims of an extrajudicial killing technically would be the dead or the deceased, but the surviving kin who have suffered harm. In fact, you could even go up to perhaps a best friend who suffered psychological harm, could even claim to be a victim of a killing. Kaya lahat po ng naapektuhan ng killing are victims. And therefore, the IDs that could be available to them should or would probably run the whole gamut, the whole array of identification documents that are available. Minimum, LGU ID or any government-issued ID.
So, ibig sabihin, pwedeng kaibigan ng biktima o namatay? Kahit sinong kaibigan?
Yes,
is there a need to establish relationship, a proof of relationship to the victim?
That's right. So, Gretchen, in this application process, there's three types of proofs or things that you need to present. First, proof of your identity. Kaya nga sabi ko, bakit tayo nagpo-focus dito lang? First is proof of identity that you exist as a person. Second, proof of victimhood, which would be the application form. You need to clearly state out what happened to the victim, dun sa namatay. Incident, paano. If you would like to submit a police report, that's fine. If you do not have it, that's also fine. Because at this point, this is not, in a sense, evidentiary. This is not add to the case of Duterte. Remember, this is just victims' participation. So it's a little bit lower than the participation of, say, a victim witness. So iba po ito. So for a participating victim, you just present proof or lay out the terms of victimhood. And then third, proof of relation to the victim. For those who are blood relatives, then of course you need to present your maybe birth certificate, death certificate, kasi it's also indicated kung sino yung wife, and I think surviving kin. And then for friends, we're quite unclear on this because we said, how do you prove friendship? So there's photos that you could also present. But I guess it's prima facie evidence. So dito, hindi naman yung magbubot-bot na parang, anong klaseng ebidensya ang kailangan dyan? Prima facie evidence. So whatever you say will not likely be contested by the other party. So even an indication or a proof that this is my relation to the deceased. Sorry, the fourth one is definitely harm. And you have to check that. So in the form, it would be indicated if you had physical harm. Kung ikaw din, kunyari parang survivor, natamaan ka ng bala while your father was being killed or you were harmed, inuntog ka sa pader, etc. You could also claim financial harm. So, hindi ka na nakapag-aral pagkatapos mamatay yung breadwinner. You could also claim psychological harm. And if you have proof of such psychological harm, then you can present that as well. But that's not required. Yung mental health certificate or parang galing sa doktor, hindi naman kailangan. Pero actually for the ICC, we have a different perception here in the Philippines when we say moral damages, yung sleepless nights, anxiety. It is similar to that, but psychological harm could also be related to trauma, or napapanaginipan mo, or hindi ka makamove on, or may PTSD, although it's not clinically diagnosed, but you think it has affected you. So all these kinds of harm or anything that has affected you, if you claim it before the court, they will clarify it and see if you fall within the parang categories. They have categories na ito immediately accepted, ito hindi accepted, at ito medyo pag-iisipan pa. So that's how they will process these documents.
Well, under those qualifications, ibig sabihin pati ang kapitbahay ay pwedeng magreklamo, maging witness dito. Kung wari na witness mo lang yung nangyari sa kapitbahay mo at ikaw ay netroma, maaari ka ring maging victim or maging witness.
Pwede as a participating victim, at ibang-iba ito sa pagiging witness.
Okay.
Yung participating victim, sabi nga namin may tatlo na nakaupo sa korte. Prosecution, defense, and they will be talking about the case. And then the third entity there would be the victims. And the legal team of the victims are entitled to present the views and concerns of the victims. It is not evidentiary in the sense na we will be the second prosecutor. Not really. If we want to include evidence, we would have to course it through the office of the prosecutor. In certain specific instances, the victims can present evidence, pero this would be about what is the situation of the victims now. Anong nangyari pagkatapos ng mga patayan? Ano ang itsura sa lugar namin? Ano yung prevailing feelings within the community? Sumaya ba kami? Natanggal na ba yung droga? And so forth. So those kinds of information could be volunteered to the court by the victims directly. And these are not necessary, evidentiary, in the sense na pasok siya dun sa proving the case or proving the crime.
Okay, so yung kapitbahay, papasok siya sa ilalim ng classification ng alin?
Victim, kung meron siyang harm, psychological harm, na pag sa kunyari sa gabi, magigising siya kasi may kalabog, may bala na naman, nananaginip ng may patayan, may barilan. Itong klaseng psychological harm could be claimed as a harm that would qualify him as a victim. Pwede din kasi yung physical, kasi tumagos yung bala sa bahay nila. It could be that kind of property harm or property damage, pwede din yun. So these are victims of the war on drugs or victims of the case. And this is rather complicated because there are many victims of Duterte's war on drugs, but there may be a small portion that will be qualified as victims of the case. Kasi may qualifier. So, hindi po ibig sabihin na hindi nakapasa sa ICC, hindi na kayo biktima. Hanap siguro ng ibang paraan para maremedyohan yan. Kung kayo ay nakakita, so si kapitbahay na witness niya kung anong nangyari, then that person would become a victim witness and could volunteer such information to the court.
It does bring to mind, though, that back in the Duterte administration, there were several matrices released linking, to, 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 to show the extent of the drug trade in the Philippines. How about those who were wrongly tagged? Do they also qualify as victims of the case?
Well, at this point, because the case is only limited to extrajudicial killings, all those who were harmed because of the killings could qualify as victims of the case. So unfortunately, kung ganyan, parang other kinds of harm yan, or other kinds of victimization, we're trying to see if the prosecutor will include that kind of sabihin natin, torture or other inhumane acts as part of the acts committed within the crimes against humanity. We're trying to expand, in fact, the case to not only include extrajudicial killings, but also other forms of inhumane acts, including rape, torture, and even imprisonment. And that would certainly largen or widen the scope of the victims' side.
There are some who argue that the crimes of humanity on rape and torture could be hard to prove. What do we have on that end from what you're seeing so far? Paano kaya malilink yan kay former president if these are actually personal acts committed by law enforcement? They could be passed off as collateral damage to what has happened. Or what challenges do you see on that end?
Definitely the nexus. So yun nga, yung connection no rape o kaya ng torture doon kay Duterte as, for the case at present. So if the instructions include kill them and torture them on the side or rape them on the side, then that would really qualify as part of the entire modus operandi. However, and to be frank, I haven't heard Duterte say that explicitly. He has made jokes about rape, which were unacceptable, but not in the context of i-rape nyo lahat ng mga drug addict or i-torture nyo lahat ng mga drug addict. But if the unwritten or unsaid instructions include that to make them suffer as much as possible, then it could be appreciated in his favor in the sense that sabi niya patayin, and that includes everything within the scope of dehumanizing them. For Duterte and I think for the police, it has to be a clear point that the police did not, kumbaga, it's not their free will. Can I rape this or not rape this? So it should be within the mantle of instructions or directives. There could also be a connection to the reward. So kung yung reward system ay magko-cover pa rin dun sa rape at saka sa torture, it could be very well appreciated as part of the modus operandi. And even imprisonment. Actually, parang yun yung isa sa pinakamadali na i-prove kasi yung imprisonment necessary to the entire war on drugs. Ang sabi, magkulong at pumatay. Kaya inaabangan namin na ma-expand talaga yung charges ng prosecutor. Sinabi naman na that the prosecutor will be banking on its arguments in the warrant of arrest plus. At sa confirmation of charges, sinabi na rin niya na at least 2 witnesses ang ihaharap niya.
Okay, taking a look at all the things that you described, isn't it also a bit too broad in terms of qualifying victims and those who will stand as victims of or witnesses rather to this case? There were 30 identification documents recommended by the ICC registry, but the defense has said that they are trying to reduce the risk of fraud. Hindi ba parang ang lawak din naman nung maaaring maging qualification?
Well, for us also, we want to eliminate the risk of fraud na may peking biktima na makapasok o kaya ma-qualify dito sa ICC. which is why we ask that the IDs be presented. We are not objecting to the presentation of identification cards. What we're just asking is leeway in terms of ano ba yung available. There are costs to getting these IDs. Sabi nga nung isang victim, tinanong ko specifically about the passport because the defense wanted that, passport or national ID. The victim I talked to had a national ID paper. Tapos, no, parang card and then natatanggal yung picture niya. Sabi niya, attorney, okay ba to? Kasi yung picture niya parang nagpipeel off. Sabi ko, pwede naman siguro. But the passport, she says, why will I get a passport when it costs 1,200? I have to take time off from work, etc. And the costs will pile up. And I won't be using this passport. So I would rather get something for free. For example, the national ID, if I can take time off work. Or I will get a barangay ID, a postal ID, an LGU ID. Other things that are immediately within reach. And as I've said, these are anyway alternative to each other. They are government issued and proper documents for identification. So on our part, that is already proof of their identity. Yung isa pang document na sinasabi nila is the birth certificate. I think everybody should have a birth certificate in the Philippines. But apparently, in urban poor communities, not everybody does. Or people have, hindi fake Let me just find the word. Defective birth certificates. Baby girl Santos. So they haven't been able to check these birth certificates. In some cases, there are double registrations of birth certificates kasi ni-register ni nanay, ni-register ni tatay, so magkaibang birthday. Yung ibang sitwasyon naman, apologies, pero anak sa labas at hindi alam kung anong ilalagay na pangalan. So yung iba, nawawalan ng middle name. Yung iba naman, kinukuha kaagad yung pangalan ng tatay kahit walang acknowledgement sa likod. So nagkakagulo kasi namatay na si tatay, wala namang pirma sa likod ng papagamit niya yung last name niya. So para po dun sa mga komportable na at maayos, siguro hindi nyo na po problemahin, pero yung iba, posibleng maging problema. And the only thing that we ask is for understanding that whatever the situation is in these communities, we have to accept that and adjust accordingly. The worst situation that you could have is you have no ID. And we are thankful that the ICC will consider, actually the pretrial chamber says that they will consider, but you have to present the affidavit. So ito na yung magiging in lieu of any ID kung wala ka talaga. Here is an affidavit of two persons who say or who will testify that you are this particular person. So ito yung pangalan mo, dito ka nakatira at dito ka pinanganak. So at the least, we have that default or parang catch-all kung sakaling hindi pwede, kung walang ID.
And the prosecution has until July 1 to submit evidence. What should we expect by then?
Well, the thing is, this exchange of evidence is not, in a sense, comprehensive, that they will give everything. They will indicate how many witnesses there will be. They will indicate in preliminary matters what will be the language. At the most, they would indicate the nature of the testimonies of the witnesses. I do think there will be disclosure of part of the documents. At the minimum, they will give the title of the documents because they said they have like something thousands of pages. They will maybe say that we will present as document Command Memorandum Circular 2016-16, which the defense would have or should have kasi this is tokhang o plantokhang. So, kung ilang pages man yun, edi, ayan na yun. They will definitely identify dates. So, this is important for us, I think. They will identify the dates when the hearings will be held. Kung sa atin kasi, and of course, the dates will depend on the number of witnesses. So, sa limbayan yun. The defense also has a disclosure requirement to disclose portions of their evidence or at the least, yung direction of their defense. And we will scrutinize more closely itong submissions ng defense kasi hindi pa yata ina-upload yung sa mismong sa defense. Ano? Pero interesting to kasi pwedeng sabihin ni Duterte, I will invoke grounds to exclude criminal responsibility like insanity, incapacity. That would be really interesting if he indicates so.
Wow, a lot to expect by that date. But I do remember you saying that at least a month before the September confirmation of charges hearing, all witnesses should be turned in. Is that correct? Dapat yung July 1 ba yung deadline na yon na dapat lahat ng witness na gustong mag-come forward ma-submit na at ma-declare na?
Well, I would say so, yes. But I think the absolute, parang the hard deadline would be yung August. So August 1 month before. But yung July, parang agahan naman natin. I'm seeing that this pre-trial chamber is very strict with the deadlines. So they're sticking to parang maximum and minimum. So hindi sila lumalampas doon sa periods involved. For example, the first appearance should be done within 48 hours to 96 hours. They did the minimum. And then the confirmation of charges hearing should be set within 6 months to 9 months. I think they did 6 months. 4 months to 6 months. So they did 6 months, the maximum. So now they're keeping to the time and they're setting the deadline earlier pa for people. For the victims, the deadline is August. Pero I guess for the prosecution and the defense, because the defense actually is asking for time na pag binigay nyo naman sa amin yung ebidensya, give us time to digest it and understand it. And therefore, our disclosure of evidence will be on a rolling basis also. Kumbaga, as you give it, then we will respond. I don't see any reason why it could expand beyond August. By September, more or less, all things should be set in place already. So for the I'm just going back to for the victims / witnesses who want to come forward, please be mindful of the deadline. So kung meron pa po kayong nalalaman sa war on drugs, pwede pa pong humarap, kaya pang ihabol. Pero sana June 30 at the latest. At meron pong iba't ibang mga platform kung paano humarap sa ICC. Meron silang website, Witness Appeals. At meron din silang microsite doon na OTP link. Pwede pong mag-apply doon or mag-suggest kung ano yung mga areas for the OTP to investigate further.
All right. Thank you so much for giving us updates on the ICC case and dropping some bombshells over there over what to expect in the coming months. Maraming salamat. We have ICC Assistant to Counsel Atty. Kristina Conti on Morning Matters today.
Thank you, Gretchen, for the time.